correct me if I'm wrong, but there's some assumption that we're going to get greener as we go. I mean, for instance, I'm going to put a wind turbine on my house, you know, so that the rest of the island will be influenced over time. It's not a static number that we should be producing.
The 7 tons includes on-island and off-island transportation?
I understand that's the basis for the Bambina Exhibit.
Yes, it does.
And that's why it's so high in comparison, for example, to Vancouver, where the average, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the average in Vancouver is 3 tons per capita. Given the transportation infrastructure that's happening there. But because you're so ferry dependent and you have so much people living off the village, the commuting and the transportation dependency is so much higher.
And did you consider the continued increase in population? I mean, there's a lot of development going on now. You're assuming that we keep developing the rural development that we've got.
Well, sort of within reason. I mean, we are actually suggesting, and I think I said that fairly early on, that one of the benefits of doing this type of plan is to radically slow development outside the Cove for a number of reasons.
So that's part of the plan, is to cut off development outside the Cove.
Well, not necessarily.
That's your premise. I think you should say it. It is.
No, it's not our intent to cut it off. Besides, let's be very clear, our mandate did not include talking about the rest of the island, and that's why I brought that up early on. I said we did have to touch on the rest of the island because it's related. You can't ignore it. But if you're asking our approach is that we should be preserving as much of the rest of the island as green, forested area as possible. Bob, you want to?
Yeah. Question here and then back.
Yeah, I'd like to represent unofficially the people who commute every day. Most of those people aren't here right now because they've spent 7 hours or 8 hours at work and 3 or 4 hours commuting, and they're at home right now getting ready for an 8-hour period before they can do it all over again. I'm one of those people who commutes every day. I choose not to drive a car. I cycle in the summertime. I'm a foot passenger. I carpool. I bus. And that regime of getting up and commuting 3 or 4 hours a day and being at work makes it really makes the low impact commute very undesirable. And there's a couple of things that make it very undesirable. You know, there's very poor protection in the Cove as a foot passenger waiting in the rain. If you get off the ferry and you want to take the bus, you have to walk over through the traffic, wait on a bus, wait for the traffic to discharge, wait for most of the people who have parked down there to discharge before the bus goes. And then there's the whole host of things that BC Ferries does to make a foot passenger very difficult in their life. It's a car-dominated environment, our Cove is. And I think the thing that would really impress those people who commute, who don't come out very often, aren't very expressive of their opinion, would be to see something get done. You know, there's a deep cynicism, 15 years of this kind of chat. When's it going to happen? And I think a token of assurance to people who don't get to show up at these meetings, but who have to go through the rigor of coming and going in a sustainable way, would be to start doing something with the ferry marshalling. I think your presentation makes a lot of sense. There's nothing in there that doesn't make sense to me. I think it all sounds good. And if you can do it in the next couple of years while this council have tenor, go for it, because that's what's going to get you guys elected again, is seeing something happen. So there's lots of people here who probably want to throw up some smoke and say, well, I can't agree with that, I can't agree with that. We live in a cooperative sort of sense. Everything has to be aired, and everyone has to vote and agree. But if you do something, I mean, that'll make people believe that Silent's actually able to do it. And go for it,
Eric?
The 2,000 people that you speak of who will the increase in population in the Cove, that's a net increase for the island then, eh?
Oh, yes it is, but just to clarify, it's an additional 1,500 people into the Cove to what lives there today.
Okay, an additional 1,500 people in the Cove. So now but the island that will be people who would have otherwise lived where? On the mainland? Because we just heard that the average the per capita GHG emission is 3 tons for somebody who doesn't live on the island and lives in Vancouver. Well, does it make sense to encourage them to come to Bowen and raise their consumption or their output to, now is that, yeah,
If they can live in the village and help us to bring these numbers down, absolutely.
yeah. Okay, another question. And this gentleman has already raised it over here, the population increase that you're assuming, what much of what you say here must assume some level of population change. Now, what were you using? If you said that, I'm afraid I missed it.
Are you questioning whether we made assumptions as to how many people would arrive here over time? Is that what you're asking?
Well, obviously it would change over time, yes, but you must have some population level at particular points in the future in your planning.
Yeah, well, I mean, we came at it from two ways. We came at it from how many people do we want, which we're saying is roughly 1,500 to start to make a significant dent in this. And in addition to that, somebody must know exactly how many people are coming to the island per year now. Is it around 100 or, right? So if you take that number out through the time we've allocated, it ends up almost at the same number. So we're saying we should drive, as a community, we should drive most of those people into the Cove.
Okay, but you're also talking about amounts of parking, about so much space for ferry marshalling, about so much commercial space. Aren't those estimates based in some way on assumptions about levels of population
They are,
and rate
that's
of change?
why you don't see the balls juggling here, but that's what's happening. The plan, and hopefully I've made that clear, but I'll just mention it again, is very adaptable to changing conditions. So the commercial space could be quite low, or it could be quite high. But the point is, as a planner, we have to allow for the high condition to happen and allocate space for it where we want it. Similarly, the ferry marshalling, the way it's designed right now, would work fantastically with exactly the kind of traffic loads we have today and with the existing ferry. It does allow for that to increase a little bit, but not much, because the primary goal is to lower car traffic.
It would not satisfy what you're proposing now, even within its adaptable limits, would not satisfy BC ferries if what we wanted was that larger ferry.
If you want a larger ferry, that's unlikely in this plan. Absolutely. That's one of
Thank you
our
very much.
premises. Yeah. However, the caveat is, if you want more pedestrians on the ferry, this would allow for that.
Thank you.
Ellen, there's a lot of wonderful things in that plan. It's very fertile ground to work with for the community in the future, especially the parking policies and the pedestrian orientation. But I think much of those good things can be accomplished without having a loop road through the park. I was on the transportation working group that about a year ago, it was just December 2006, a year ago, presented our report. And I think you haven't accurately described what that report included. It wasn't only the acoustics as one sort of aspect to what we recommended. We showed in the report that you could, within the existing right-of-way on Government Road, could have a median in the middle to separate the offloading traffic, treed median that would also meet the ferry operating criteria, that they want double lane loading and unloading. All those things could be met within the existing right-of-way modifications, including an HOV lane from up the hill. And importantly, although this wasn't in the report, but one of the other transportation reports mentioned that BC Ferries has offered to collect for the community a terminal improvement fee, which can be and could have been, should be immediately, I believe, enacted and start to collect this fund for whatever changes we do make for ferry marshalling. But so much could be done right away, and that report showed basically municipal council how to do that. So I was very dismayed to see the loop road, the classic loop road, reintroduced into to what otherwise is a very exemplary plan. The ferry marshalling issue was a major topic in the last municipal election here. You remember Terry Cotter laid out in